So heredity and evolution. So first of all, let me tell you some basic terms which we are going to see in this chapter. And this is very important to know these terms. Okay, only if you understand these terms, you can understand rest of the chapter over here. So first thing is genetics. Now, what is genetics? Genetics is nothing but a branch which deals with the study of heredity and variation. Now, what is this heredity and variation? Heredity means, for example, in simple words, if I want to tell, okay, heredity is nothing but each of the person or each of a individual have different characteristics, correct? So those characteristics are transferred from one generation to another generation. For example, a child when born gets the characteristics maybe of mother, father, or maybe of grandparents, okay? So it depends. So heredity is nothing but it is just the transmission of characters from one generation to the next. Okay, even though some of the characteristics are transferred from one generation to another generation, still there may be some differences. For example, it's not necessary that the children has the same characteristics as that of the parents. If, for example, okay, we see it as variation. Now, what is this variation? Variation is nothing but the difference in the characters. Difference in the characters of the parents and offspring is called as what? Variation. Now, what is the example which I can give you? Consider parents, that is mother and father, is having black eyes. Okay. But it's not necessary that the child may also have black eyes. It may be blue, green, or anything. Okay. So that is variation. Even you can take an example of hair color. Okay. Hair may be black in color of the parents, but for the child, it may be black or it may not be black. So these difference, if there is any difference, then we say it is what? Variation. Okay. And heredity means what? Some of the genes, the genetic characters which are there, they will transfer from generation to generation. It will just keep on going. Okay. So those are called as what? Heredity. So these are the two important terms which comes under the study of genetics. Okay. Now, basically, if I talk about the variations, there are two types of differences which you can observe over here. So one is called as the somatic variation. Another one is called as gametic variation. Now, what is the somatic and gametic variation? Somatic means this variation will occur only in somatic cell of body. Means they are also called as what? Acquired traits. Okay, acquired traits means what? These are some of the characters or variations which are not inherited or transmitted in the next generation. So it is not necessary that the somatic, if it's a type of somatic variation, then it will not get transferred or inherited from one generation to the another generation. Therefore, it is also termed as what? Acquired traits. Okay, then the second one is gametic variation. Now, in the name itself, it is present. Gametic means what? Here, whatever the occurrence of variation is there, it will take place in the gametes, means the germ cells. So, obviously, gametes, if the variation is taking place, obviously, it will be transferred from one generation to another generation. Therefore, gametic variations are also called as inherited trait. So if they ask you about acquired traits and inherited traits, acquired means they are not transmitted from generation to generation, but inherited means they are transmitted from one generation to another generation. Why is that so? Because the inherited traits, the variation occur in the germ cells, means the gametes, the main gametes, which helps in the reproduction. Whereas somatic variation means what? Only in vegetative cell of the body it takes place. In turn, called as the somatic cell or somatic variation. Okay, now why is it important that the variations should take place? Now there are a few points, okay, which are necessary. Means if they ask you what is the importance of variation, okay, the main importance of variations is, first of all, it is very necessary that you need an evolution of your family members, right? Means if you take a tree chart of your family member, you can see that there are many ancestors. Okay, so for that sake, for the study of your evolution, who were your ancestors, how were they, where they lived, okay, what are their characteristics, how is it gonna pass from the parents to the offsprings? So for all these things only, variations are very necessary. Even nowadays, you can see that there are many changes which takes place in environment. Like for example, pollution is there, correct? Various kinds of diseases are there. So because of that, our body should be adapted to today's environment if we want to survive, obviously. So for these reasons only, variation is very important. So what is the importance of variation? First is, it acts as a basis for heredity and evolution of the family. And the second one is what? It will increase the chance of survival, because they say survival of the fittest, right? So it's very necessary to variate your whatever genes is there so that you can survive in today's generation. Okay, now why does this variation occur? Okay, what is the main cause of the occurrence of the variation? Now, there are many reasons, but out of which the most important reason over here is mutation. Now, what is this mutation? Okay, mutation means alteration in one of your genes is called as mutation. For example, you may be knowing that the living beings have their hereditary or genetic material called as what? DNA. Deoxyribonucleic acid. So DNA acts as a genetic material in the living beings. Okay. So what happens over here is DNA is having sequence. Okay, like A, T, G, C base pairs it will be having. And A always pairs up with T and G always pairs up with C. It's not in detail for you. Okay, but this is called as what? Sequence. So if I roughly draw the diagram of the DNA, it is somewhat like this. And here, each turn will be having 10 base pairs. Okay, base pairs means nothing but AT and GC combinations. Fine. So if there is alteration in any of these genes, for example, here there is a mutation taking place. Means instead of A pairing with T, if this pairs with C, obviously what happens over here? The genetic material has been changed, right? Because of the alteration of the genes. Here the pairing is different. So that will lead to something which is called as mutation. So mutation is nothing but it is the alteration in one of the genes also. It may happen. Alteration of genes. Okay. Maybe here instead of AT, TT dimer can be formed. Means I'm just giving you an example. Okay. How there are chances of the genes being mutated. So mutation is in short what? Alteration of the genes. Okay. Even there are various other causes. Like for example, recombination of genes. Recombination of genes means what? Again, the same. Okay. A with T, then G, then C. So there is a proper line for every gene sequence. Okay. So if this line is being altered, for example, this is a base pair sequence. Instead of this base pair here, T is equal to T, means T double bond C or TT. Any one of the thing comes over here. then we say it's a recombination or crossing over of genes. Okay, means suppose if this is your chromosome, here genetic materials will be present. Okay, so if the one chromosome combines with the other chromosome, there may be possibility that the characters of this chromosome will come over here. Okay, so if this characters come in the first chromosome, then it is called as what? Recombination. Okay, so this is the second reason why there may be a variation. So how these variations are caused like mutation and recombination is whenever there is an exchange of the chromosomal segment during the gamete formation. Okay, that will be the learning in detail at the last point, okay, of your chapter. Okay, what is the chromosome or what is the sex chromosome and how are gametes formed? Fine. So these are the two important terms because of which the variation is caused. Okay, now obviously this deals with again the inherited traits and the acquired traits also. But if there is a variation to be occurred, the main important role will be of inherited traits. Why? Because those are the traits which are transferred from one generation to the another generation. That is why we don't look similar. Human beings or you don't look similar, right? Why is that so? We are not clones because we have a genetically determined features. That is why everyone looks different. Okay. Except for the twins, obviously. So now as I was talking about the inherited traits. Okay, so taking this inherited traits into consideration, Gregor Mendel, J.G. Mendel, okay, he performed an experiment and he put forward 3 types of laws, okay, which will show about the different characteristics or what happens if there is a crossing over between 2 different characteristics. Okay, so that is what we are going to learn now. So first of all, this Gregor Mendel, he performed an experiment by taking a pea plant. Okay, the scientific name of the pea plant is Pisum sativum. Okay, so why he took the pea plant? There are several reasons for this. Okay, first of all, pea is a plant which have short life cycle. Okay, second, in a pea plant, many seeds are produced. It's a self-pollinating plant. And lastly, it has several different contrasting characters. So taking into consideration all these features of this plant only, he has chosen what? The pea plant, that is Pisum sativum, for his experiment. Okay, so generally Gregor Mendel is known as the father of genetics and he had chosen 7 different characteristics of the pea plant. Okay, and he merged all of them. Merged means he crossed all of them to find out what is the product that he's going to obtain. Okay, so to find these things, he has put forward 3 types of laws, which are also known as what? Mendel's law. So the first law is called as law of dominance. Now, what is this law of dominance? Okay, now see, there are 2 terms basically. Just write it down. One is dominant, another one is recessive. Now, dominant means what? A character, okay, which plays an important role, means it has a dominant attitude. Like, for example, if there is a tall tree, okay, so the genes which the tall tree will be having is capital T, possible, capital T, small t. Okay, so if any of these two characters are there, means two capitals or one capital and one small, then they are termed as what? Dominant characters. Okay, so over here T stands for what? Capital T stands for tall. So therefore, here the dominant character will be what? Tall. In the same way, if I take recessive, suppose instead of one capital T and one small t, if you have both small t's, then you consider this as what? Recessive. Means the plant will be dwarf, short plants. Okay, so dominant character means what? It will stand in front. So that is called as what? Dominant character. And recessive character means it is always be suppressed. Okay, in suppressed form, it will be there if the first crossing over is done at that time. So law of dominance is nothing but it will be having a dominant allele. Now, allele means gene, okay? Which is going to determine the character of that particular thing. Means the organism's character or appearance or whatever features you can say. So it determines the organism appearance. Okay, if it is what? A dominant allele. But even if there is a presence of recessive allele along with it, then there will be no noticeable effect. Means you will just ignore that thing because you will not be able to find those things. Okay, so that is called as law of dominance. Okay, means two genes will be there, which is having characteristics. Out of that, one will be dominant and other will be what? Recessive. So whatever the dominant allele is there, it will express itself. That's why we say that the tree is tall. Okay, instead of saying that or expressing the characteristic which is recessive, which is the tree is dwarf. Okay, so this is called as what? Law of dominance. Second one is law of segregation. Segregation. Segregate means what? Separate. Okay, so law of segregation means suppose there are two alleles. Okay, which is having what? A heritable character which you can separate. And when this separation will happen of this heritable characteristics? When it is forming the gamete. Okay, means different products you will get. So that is called as what? Two alleles for a, what do you say, appearing for a law of segregation. So segregation means whenever there is a gamete formation, at that time, two genes will separate out to give different characteristics. It is called as what? Law of segregation. Then the third one is law of independent assortment. Independent assortment. In this, each pair of allele will separate or segregate, okay, independently. Okay, so it will not see that what other pairs of alleles are doing during the gamete formation. Each pair of allele, they will segregate independently without taking into consideration the other pairs of alleles whenever there is a formation of the gamete. Okay, you have just the laws statement, okay, which is there in the textbook. So if they ask you about the laws, you just have to write the statement over there. And obviously there are two more terms which are related to this. One is monohybrid cross and other one is dihybrid cross. Okay, so these are the two concepts. So first is monohybrid cross. What is monohybrid cross? Mono means single and hybrid means what? There is a combination of two things. Okay, so monohybrid cross is nothing but a cross between two pea plants with one pair of contrasting characters. Okay, now what is this one pair of contrasting character? Earlier, I told you about the tall thing, right? So whatever the dominant character will be there, that will only express itself in the first monohybrid cross. So whenever there is a cross between two pea plants, okay, and only one pair of contrasting characters if you're taking, then it is called as what? Monohybrid cross. Okay. For example, how this monohybrid cross has been conducted, let's see. Now, instead of T, maybe I can take the green color and yellow color seeds. Okay. So here I'm going to take green color. Okay. That is G, capital GG, and small gg, which will stand for yellow. Fine. So if I want to cross this, or if I want to perform a monohybrid thing of this thing, well, how I'll do? First of all, I'll draw a Punnett square. Okay. Okay, so this is GG, capital, and this is small. So when I'll cross this, what are the products I'll get? First G, second. Okay, first of both the sides, that is capital G, small g. Here again, capital G, small g, capital G, small g, and capital G, small g. So in this scenario, if I'm crossing this thing, two things, that is green and yellow, what I'm getting over here is what? Okay, between yellow pod and green pod means the seeds. Okay, when I'm crossing it over, I got everything as green. Why I got everything as green? Because see, in every square, there is capital G. So it's a dominant characteristic over here, green color. So therefore, when I did the monohybrid cross, I got the F1 generation or the F1 progeny as green. F1 means what? Filial. The full form of F1 is filial. So whenever a monohybrid crossing is done, you're going to get what? A single pair of contrasting characters. Means the dominant one will express itself. In the same way, one more example I'll give you. For example, here I'll take the easy one. That is the tall thing. Okay, tall and dwarf. So suppose if I take a tall plant plus a short plant. Okay, so I'm going to calculate what type of progeny I'm going to get. Progeny means whether I'm going to get a tall plant or whether I'm going to get a short plant. See, obviously the same thing if I do over here, I'm going to get again what? Tall. Correct? So this generation is the F1 generation. Okay, in the F1 generation, I'll be getting what? Everything will be tall, all tall. But again, if I cross F1 into F1, that is which I'll get what? F2 generation, second filial generation. Here I will observe some difference. That is, we'll see that some will be short and some will be tall. Okay, so whatever characteristic is being dominant, it will only be expressed in the first filial generation when it is crossed. Because tallness is the dominant trait over here, whereas the short, this one, dwarfness is the recessive trait. Okay, so this you have to keep in mind. That is in F1 generation, all plants will be of same characteristic. That is tall because it expresses as a dominant character over here. Fine. So this is the first one. Now what I'll do is I'll go to the second part, which is the dihybrid cross. Di means what? Two. Okay. So here as I have written, cross between two pea plants with one pair of contrasting character is called as what? Monohybrid cross. So what will be the definition of dihybrid cross? Instead of one pair, I'll write it as two pairs. Okay. So here it will be a cross between two pea plants with two pairs of contrasting characters. Now, how does this happen? Okay, for this, I'll give you example because I told you if there are many characters together, okay, means two pairs or more than two pairs, obviously what will happen is you will get different types of characters. Not only tall you will get, but tall, short, everything you will get. So here I'm going to take crossing, okay, of two different characters. So I'll just write it down. One is, let's take YYRR and YYRR. Now what this stands for? Okay, Y is nothing but yellow. Okay, capital R is nothing but round. Then this small y will be green and the small r will be wrinkled. Okay, so if I'm going to cross these two, what is the product I'll get? I'll take one of each, capital Y, capital R, and here small y, small r. So when I cross this, I should get first generation, which is F1. So what is the F1 generation I'll get? It's very simple because each of the characteristic will be present in the F1 generation. That is capital Y, small y, capital R, small r. So I'm going to get yellow and round. I hope you understood this concept without using the Punnett square. Because earlier I told you that F1 generation, you will only get the dominant characteristic. And here, dominant means what? Represented by capitals. So obviously here capital Y and capital R is there. So you will get what? The dominant characteristic, that is yellow and round in the F1 generation. Now, because it is a dihybrid cross, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give a second generation, which is F2. Means I will do the self-fertilization of this. Self-fertilization. Okay, so I'll just send you one more mail. Okay, please join to that mail and then we'll continue.